Hello, this is Wes Bridle, and this is another Kingdom Calling Economic Update video. It's been almost 3 months since our last one, so I've been really busy with just projects here in the office. I apologize for taking so long. Because it has been so long, the pile of paper that I over the last couple months had planned to talk about was about 1.5 feet tall, and that just doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to hit the big point highlights over the last few months. Hope you all had a good Christmas. I'm going to jump into it. Depending on how long these go, there's either going to be 3 or 5 videos that I just shoot off right here. This first one's going to be on just economic outlook in general and perhaps a little bit about the stock market. As far as banks, a lot of bad signs have come out for banks over the last few months. One study found that 75% of home repossessions had errors in the documents. A court found that Bank of America could not take a house because of a tax lien. That could be a really difficult problem for banks. If people aren't paying their mortgage, they're probably also not paying their county tax bills. And if then the bank, which this is a huge amount of their money is put out for this home, can't repossess that home because the county also or the city also has a claim on that home, then the banks are really going to be in trouble. They're already in trouble because they're holding tons of junk, but that's a really bad sign for them, which is really a bad sign for the economy in general. U.S. city pensions are unfunded and going to go under. This is cities, states. We've talked about this in the past, but more and more signs are coming out. I think that's going to be a big story for 2011. That we have massive debt problems. We tend to talk about the highline numbers, the debt that the U.S. government has, but what may end up being the first thing that kills us is all the local debt, because there's a tremendous amount of debt there, and the cities and the states can't print their own money. I thought there's a really powerful symbol in the story I read. If you remember the mine collapse, the miners in Chile were underground for a long time and were eventually rescued. Just in the story that I read about it, it talked about that they were reborn as they came out of it. So these miners are stuck underground in a really terrible place for a long time, and then they're reborn. I thought that was a really powerful thing. I think we're gonna see some really hard times in this country, but there is an amazing rebirth that comes from that, and I think the Lord is doing a lot of things with this time. So I thought that was a powerful symbol. U.S. housing is double dipping. So we saw it go down a lot. It seemed to kind of flatten out for a while, and it's now going severely downhill. We're seeing this. Zillow's put out some reports, as well as the Case-Shiller numbers, and so that's a really bad sign. When he put this out, Shiller said that if they continue going down this level, it's going to be horrible for the economy, which of course we've been saying that for over a year now. Sentiment is giddy, and insiders selling off the charts. So the people who run the companies, the CEOs, CFOs, the people who really know what's going on, they're selling hand over fist. But sentiment around the country is giddy, that everything is only going to go up. Those are really negative indicators. We've had this going on for months. The situation is only getting more extreme. There are 44 million people on food stamps and 20 million employed by the government. So that's a tremendously high percentage of the people who are directly fed by the rest of the people. That's a huge percentage, and that's not sustainable. Massive food problems all around the country. We started talking about this a year ago, and we're starting to see this. Food prices are at record highs right now, and we're starting to see riots in different parts of the country. We're seeing some of that affected by weather, some of that just affected by what we call the third world actually being economically successful and being able to eat better food than they were before. So severe food problems are coming. I hope you're doing something about that. Florida State did a study which is pretty neat, and it goes to, I think, part of what's behind what's happening here. 48% in a poll found that the recession had increased their appreciation of family. There's a lot more things like that in the study, but I thought that was a powerful thing, and some of the purpose behind some of these difficult times. This election that we just had, I think, could bring all this to a head, because one of the things that happened 2 years ago when things got crazy, the government just spent massive amounts of money. Well, a lot of these Republicans that came into office promised that they would not do anything like that. So the next time something comes to a head, you have this majority now of the House that said they will not do something like that. It'll be interesting to see if they stick to that, but it could bring things to a head more quickly. We're seeing some good economic signs, and as I'll talk about in a little bit, some of those are reported a lot more rosy than they really are, but we're seeing some economic signs. But remember, last year, about a year ago at this time, we were also seeing some economic signs, and everyone thought, okay, everything's going to be fine, 2010 is going to be great, but a couple months into the year, that all kind of fell apart. So just because the media is reporting a lot of good things doesn't mean everything is rosy. Corporate America is actually doing pretty well. However, they haven't really started to feel the bite of these rising commodity prices. Commodity prices have gone through the roof because of the money printing that the government is doing. And so that is their input for a lot of these companies. And so we're going to start to see that they're either going to have to raise their prices, which hurts the economy, or they're going to be have their margins squeezed, which hurts their profits. So that's something to watch out for. Municipal bonds are getting crushed. They really can't afford the promises they've made, and so we've seen a huge drop in that market. This could very easily be, I would say probably is, the equivalent of the early warning signs of the subprime crisis. In the middle of 2007, we started seeing warning signs of a subprime crisis. No one really thought much of it. The stock market was doing great, everyone was happy, everything seemed fine, and we had these little subprime mess. But as it turns out, that ended up being a huge problem, as we saw later. I think this mortgage situation, not mortgage, but municipal bond and state bond situation is a similar boat for us. And sorry, that is not in the right. So here's something interesting. We've been talking for years about the danger of retirement plans, and it was all kind of theoretical when we started talking about it, but this has been happening. So the U.S. is not the only country with problems. Europe has very similar problems to us, as does Japan. In order to help with their budget, these countries, Argentina, Hungary, Ireland, France, Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, and Bulgaria, have started claiming the money that was set aside for the people's retirement in order to make their budgets look a lot better. Of course, they always say, oh, we'll take care of you, but that's what they're doing. They're taking the money of the people. Well, you have a lot of leftist organizations in the United States that think that the government needs to be taking care of people, and people need to be giving more to the government, and the government can be taking care of the people. Annenberg Foundation put out a note, and it basically said, well, we're not going to take your money. We just want to make you put your money in here, and we'll promise to pay you out in the future. So how is that not taking our money? But anyway, so there are groups in this country, they're still kind of at the fringe, but there are groups in this country talking about, there was a note on the White House's website about it, but a lot of countries in Europe are actually doing this. So this is a very real thing. I think that's been long enough for this one. I'm going to do a part 2 here in a minute, and so that'll be up soon. If you haven't seen the Coming Storm video, there's a link right to it on this right next to this video that you're watching. That's a really important presentation we put together. If you look at it now, you'll see a lot of what we talked about has already happened, but the big things you really need to be planning for haven't happened yet, and there still is time for you to prepare. Thank you, and God bless you.